Welcome to a new anime review series. This is High School DxD Anime Review, Episode 1. Why am I calling episodes? Because the series is still being made. Yep, this is reviewing the very first season of High School DxD. Those of you thinking, what the heck is High School DxD? It is an anime based upon a series of light novels, so it was also adapted into a manga. The name itself is reference to breast. Not kidding about that. That's my theory anyways. The writer of the series has the nickname of the God of Breast. I have no idea why in the world he calls himself that, but he does. Yes. Now, I should point out though right away, this show is not for little kids. This is for teenagers up into adults. Because there are jokes about sex, the main character's a pervert, and the fact that a lot of the female characters go butt naked throughout the whole entire season. So yeah, not for little kids. I do not recommend this show for little kids. Just like with Rosario plus Vampire, this show is not for kids. This is from high school to adult. That is basically, I recommend this age bracket for this particular series. Now the story of the series is actually, the start of it is somewhat similar to that of Tokyo Ghoul, where the main character, well, even though this is slightly different, it's kind of similar where he's with a girl, and the girl attacks him, and he apparently dies, and brought into the world that they're kind of involved with. In the case of Tokyo Ghoul, Kaneki was basically, the woman he went on a date with, named Rise, she wanted to eat him. And she got basically, she chased him to a construction site where a bunch of beam just basically sliced right through her, and then he went through surgery to become a ghoul. Something similar happened here. The only difference is that this character, his name is, if I can find his name here. Yeah. The main character of this particular series, his name is, if I can find it here, Isao Haido. Yeah. He is the main character of the series. And like I said, he's a pervert. Now, here's something I thought was really weird. I'm looking up his dub actor. I looked at this, I'm like, really? The guy's got 2 dub actors? Yeah, I'm not kidding about this. For the first couple seasons, of course, this is the English dub, he's voiced by Scott Friedman. And then starting with season 3, he's voiced by Josh Grail. Yeah, and he essentially put the main character of the series. Those of you curious to what the heck does this guy look like? Black hair, wears a black coat, a blue white button-up shirt that's unbuttoned with a red t-shirt underneath, dress pants, basically wears a school uniform. If you look him up online, this is basically his outfit. And after he was resurrected, after he got stabbed with a freaking spear, a light spear, now I'm thinking, a light spear. It's like, is this something like not very harmful? No, this spear is literally made of light. And he got stabbed by this type of spear twice over the course of 2 episodes. Happened in the pilot episode, and of course this one. And of course you had the main female lead of the series, Rise Gremory, voiced by Jamie March. Those of you who are fans of Fairy Tail, this is the voice of Kana. Yeah, the woman who drinks, wears like very little clothing, even though she wears pants. Yeah, and she's a heavy drinker. This woman is the voice of the main female lead of the series. There are other characters, of course, yes, and this character, along with Sune, is pretty much in the entire series. The Rosary herself is not in the first episode very much. She doesn't appear. She appears a couple brief times at the start of the episode, and then she disappears for most of it. Yeah. And she is noteworthy. If you look at her biggest attribute is her large chest size. Yes, seriously, it's her most noteworthy feature. And her whole group is comprised of, and her group is basically the Gremory group, which is in this school that they attend, is called the Occult Club. Makes sense, because all the characters are devils. I'm not kidding. The character Asuka gets killed and resurrected as a devil, though the way he got resurrected is particularly very bizarre. It's not just some magic hand just touches him, bam, he's back to life. No, he got stuffed with a bunch of objects. Basically, 8 pawn pieces. Yep. This series has many references to chess. I'm not talking about like a woman's chest. No, I'm not talking about that. The game chest. Rosary's king. She also has a queen. 2 bishops, though only one is actually seen in this season. The other one will appear later. A single rook, even though in the game that there's actually 2 rooks, and 8 pawn pieces. Rise just stuffed all 8 pawn pieces into the main character in order to keep himself alive. And he has this boost gear thing which transforms into a dragon. A Welsh red dragon. Yeah, you can see him in the armor form later on the season. Now, this particular season is adapted from the first 2 light novels of the series, which are called, if I can find them on here. Yeah. They are... And I should point out, though, these light novels are not very long. The first one is 5 chapters plus a prelude. The second book is 8 chapters long. Yes, 8 chapters. Thinking, that's not very long. The first book was adapted into the manga for the first 10 chapters of it. The second book was adapted for chapters 11 to 22. Okay, the name of the novels are, the first one is called Dabalos of the Old School Building. Volume 2 is known as Phoenix of the Battle School, which that's actually titled the main villain of the second light novel. The first one is the main character's first girlfriend in the series, who turned out to be a fallen angel. Yeah, the series not only references the chess, but also the Bible. Yes, there are angels, which they're not seen in this particular series. Oh no, all you guys devils, which technically put their demons, with wings. Surprisingly, they don't have tails, despite being devils. And who Rose was related to was one of the most shocking things the whole entire series. Yes. In the first book, like right after she resurrects him, and how of course, it's never mentioned here of how he's able to summon her. Yeah, because he thought her of her red hair. Yeah. Aside from her chest size, one of the most noteworthy things about this woman, about Rosary, is her long, beautiful red hair. Which, very typical for anime, a lot of the time women have long hair, they go right down to their rear end. I had an ex-girlfriend who did have pretty much the same type of hair. No idea why, that's just basically where it is. And overall, and in this first season anyways, how many characters basically have their hair do that? Only 3. One, of course, is a character who actually introduced at the end of the second episode of the series. Yep. Who in the light novel was introduced in chapter 2, and of course in the manga was in fact the second chapter of the manga. Aja, even though her name is not Asia. A blonde hair woman who is very thin, and she was first introduced as a nun. I should point out, though, her outfit is not a traditional nun outfit, which I've heard in the film Sister Act looks like she's dressed like a freaking penguin. This one is a bit different. The only time I've seen an outfit similar to this as a nun wearing a similar outfit to this, top of my head was actually in The Sound of Music. Julie Andrews' character, who was a nun originally, and then she got married to Christopher Plummer's character at the end of the film. Yeah, she wore an outfit very similar to this, though her top of her outfit is actually completely different. Yeah, and it's later found out she's actually excommunicated. Now, technically, she's not part of the church anymore. Though, when she gets killed at the end of the 4th episode, and brought back as a devil, Shisho tries to pray and read the Bible, and instead she gets headaches because she's a devil now. But she still keeps the objects like crosses and holy water. She can't exactly like touch them per se, because if they do, it will burn them. Making crosses, burning demons. And of course, holy water. I mean, did the writer of the series basically borrow stuff a lot from vampire lore? Because a lot of times demons are not generally weak against crosses and holy water. That's usually something that vampires are associated with. And I've looked up. There are vampires in this series. Oh, yes, there is. Much later on. Oh, yeah. What is the dream of the main character? He wants to form a heirloom. Those who know what that is, it's basically him surrounded by a bunch of beautiful women. Yeah, That is literally what he wants. And he basically says this in the opening episode of the series. Yeah. Also, when he gets used to his date, now, when I first heard Dove voice, I thought this was Wendy Marvel from Fairy Tail, because, well, several actors Fairy Tail are in this series. And it's not her. It's actually the dub actor for Coco, a character who only appeared in 2 story arcs of the entire anime. First was the Edoros arc, the other was actually a filler story. Yeah, involving clocks. Yep, that's basically what that was. And she gets killed off at the end of the... She gets introduced in the first episode, disappears for a little while, and then she's killed by Roz in episode 5. Yeah, that's one thing interesting you guys say about the first light novel. 5 full chapters. In the case of the second book, it's actually adapted for pretty much mostly episodes 8 through 12. A 8-chapter book is adapted into at least 5 chapters. Well, 5 episodes. Excuse me. Of course, this fallen angel character, of course, is later revealed to put a curse on Izuru in book 10. I haven't read book 10 yet, but that's when it happens. Yeah. Also, yeah, when he gets sort of introduced to her up close, after his second battle with a fallen angel, he wakes up in bed, completely naked, and Raz is butt naked too. And he asks, did they do it? No sex. Yeah, in case you're wondering, this series is not technically a hentai. Nope. Despite the fact you have female characters going butt naked, this is not a hentai. It's just a fan service type of anime. Are there panty shots? Not really, no. They're very minor, like Heroes vs. Vampire. That was actually one of the things that the anime basically was known for. This one is basically a lot more fan service than this one. I mean, you say Roz, in her second appearance in the episode, she basically strips out naked to take a shower. And she does this in less than a few minutes. Yep. Yeah, it's not the first time she did it. She actually did it again, actually in episode 8. Yep. Now, what about episode 6? And these kind of are fillerish episodes in a way, because they take bits and pieces of a couple different chapters. Episode 6 is basically taken from the first half of chapter 1 of chapter 2 of book 2, and the second half of chapter 1 of book 8. Yes, I started at book 8 a little bit. The next episode is from book 3, like the first half of it, and the second half is actually from the second half, the first half of the chapter. The other half is actually from the other chapter. Yeah, it's particularly very weird setup. Yeah, and then pretty much after Ajay basically gets, turned to a devil, she decides to, she's asked, where would she like to live? With Isuri. I'm like, okay, a teenage girl living with a guy. Yeah, and of course, he does, prior to this whole thing happening, he does introduce her to the customs of Japan, which is quite nice of him to do, because she's from Europe, and she's not used to the customs there, so okay, fine. So, briefly, she stays at the club, in the club room, and then she gets moved into Isuri's house, and she gets sort of a spare bedroom. Yeah, and I'll explain, there's another woman who moves into the house right at the end of the season. Yeah, so, and of course she gets enrolled in the school, and of course she gets used to Asumi's very pervert friends, who also watch porn, and they also peep in the girls' locker room. How do they do this? They hide in one of the lockers. The first time they see her doing this, the Rook actually catches them. I'm not kidding, she does. Yeah, somehow she can sense it, and because she's super strong, she basically punches the locker door so hard, the two guys, assuming it's actually in the back, the two perverts are actually in front, so they get the full blow of the whole entire attack. Yeah, and also, at one point, while assuming he's doing physical training, because of course he has fantasies in his head of various different things. Now, somehow Rise somehow finds out about this. She can detect it somehow because she's a mind reader. So she sort of basically chastises him for it. He says, I can't help it, I'm a teenager. That's literally his line in the actual anime. And he has his fantasy while she's sitting on his back, while he's doing push-ups. Yeah. That's basically what she does. Yeah. I think what else though? Oh yeah, how. And of course, they also kill a bunch of other fallen angels as well, including a very crazy priest. Yeah, a very crazy priest called Seed Freud. I think that's how you pronounce the guy's name. Yeah, apparently, yeah, he gets killed off. Bunch of. Yeah, it seems like the way the first arc went is like, okay, let's just have a bunch of fallen angels, and then by the end of it, all get killed off by all the characters. Yeah. And what's Asha's power? All these characters got various powers. Sune basically has got dragon gear. Asha's power is that she's a healer. Rise basically she can just various different powers. In the case of the queen, who is apparently a queen of pain. She loves pain. She gets off on it. I'm like, did the writer of the series base his character on Xena Onatopp from GoldenEye? Because it seems like he did. Yes, it seems like he based her personality off a character played by Frankie Jameson. Those of you who don't know who that actress is, she was the first actress to play Jean Grey in the X-Men movies, before she was taken over by Sophie Turner in X-Apocalypse. Yes. I'm not kidding about that. The personality is very similar there. In the case of the Rook, her personality is very similar to that of Akame ga Kill from, Akame from Akame ga Kill, despite the fact she does eat per se, but she's not like constantly eating a bunch of food and then look like she's not putting any weight at all. Yeah, she's just really strong and she's able to pick up like a bookshelf by herself and throw it at a crazy priest. I should point out though, in the light novel, when Sui first counters the priest, he does this very odd way. He's like he's there for a summoning because he apparently can't use the magic gate. So he just goes to the person's house. He goes in, he sees a corpse. Now in the light novel, he actually threw up. Yeah, he threw up. Not because of all the demonic stuff, because he saw a dead body. Yeah, he actually does this. Yeah. And from what I can tell from the first light novel when it comes to the anime, mostly it's pretty much intact, like a lot of the time. Now, how Age is first introduced, because she's very clumsy, she trips over, and so the first thing he sees of her is her panties. Yeah, not kidding about that. It's particularly, from my honest opinion, it's a well-written story, despite the fact of all the weird designs they give the characters. Yeah, in the second book, basically, the end of the 5th episode, they can choose to do the main villain of the second book. The guy who's from the House of Phoenix. A guy who's a real jerk. You don't see him with the first couple episodes. Like, the first one just training, and the second one is, 7 is just basically familiar, so some gets to get familiar, but Age does, a cute little dragon, who is male, doesn't like other males. Okay. The one in depth from the 5th book, a second book, it's mostly pretty much the same. Except they do change a line. In both the manga and the light novel, when they have now, before they get to that particular point, the story for this one is that Aisha's living with Sune. At one point, he accidentally walks in on her while she's in the bathroom, while she's bathing, and she's completely naked. And then something very comical happens. As soon as his mother walks in. Second time it happens in this series. The first time is like right after he got resurrected. Right after he had his battle with the fallen angel. And Rise is just there in his bed, butt naked, and him on top of her. And of course, comedy ensues. Though Rise just sort of manipulates her memories like it's. And of course, when Asia moved in, I said it was bridal training. Not kidding about that. It's quite hilarious. Excuse me. And this is stuff that was really weird. Okay, because apparently Rise is horny, so she teleports herself right to his room and attempts to sleep with him. She starts undressing, and then her maid shows up. Like, nope, yeah, don't need to do that. But they kind of changed the dialogue for this thing. Mostly, it's pretty much presented the same, though the dialogue is a little bit different. Yeah, and then, of course, her fiance shows up a little later. A guy she does want to marry, doesn't want anything to do with him just because he's a real jerk. what made me really mad? Not because it was. It's not just because of his terrible attitude, but because he made up with a woman right in front of Rise, a woman he's allegedly supposed to marry. So they have a ratings game. Have various characters fight each other, and of course they have the first episode is basically training. Episode 9, that is. Yeah, and of course, Asuna develops this very special ability. What is it? It's called Dress Break. He just touches various women and then snaps his fingers. And what happens? All their clothes get ripped off. Because he's a pervert. And it's pointed out, though, by the Rook. What is her name? Let's see. Her name is Kiniko. There's also Kiba. He's a swordsman. Anko is the woman who is the Queen of Pleasure. Yeah. Though I still think that the writer based it upon Xena on top. That's just my personal theory. Yeah. And so how he was able to develop this build, he practiced with Aja by basically ripping off her clothes various times because she wanted to do this. So okay. And it took many times. We finally got it right. And then, boom. He actually does this twice. He does it again the very next episode. And he does it to one person. He just touches her, just break, clothes all disappear, and embarrass her. And then she gets blasted twice by his special gear. It was quite hilarious. And then somehow he gets during the actual game itself, he gets a big boost. And gets sort of a transfer and kind of uses Kiba's ability and, of course, takes up most of Phoenix's forces. Though the only reason why the game is actually the game ends is because Sunni is Phoenix nearly kills him and Rise has no choice but to go with him. And so the next episode, all the rest of the group got a chance to go to the underworld. And he gets transported there by her brother. Who is Rise's brother? Lucifer himself. Not kidding about this. Yeah. I mean, Asuna is very happy about this. The fact that Rise is related to the Lord of the Underworld himself. Wow, this is awesome. Though he's actually not the original one. The original got killed off during an actual holy war, which involved angels, fallen angels, and devils beating the crap out of each other. And apparently one of the devil population. And he's kind of forcing this marriage on Rise. And then he sort of breaks and he gets there via Lucifer's seal. And, of course, he takes out most of the guards. Though they do change the line of dialogue here. This is actually here for both the light novel and in the manga. He says he's there for Rise's virginity. I'm not kidding. He literally does say that in the manga and the light novel. Here it's a completely different line of dialogue. But the same reaction happens from Rise. She blushes because he wants something that Phoenix should never have at all. So they have a fight. Though I should point out, though, the guy who voices the dragon has a lot. I think he's Christopher Sabat. Yeah. And so he sort of sacrifices his arm. Yeah, I'm right. It is Christopher Sabat. So yeah, they made a deal. It's get the special boost and he'll sacrifice his arm. And he gets this big, huge power up. Gets basically a big armor mode. And he has it for about 10 seconds. And he uses it. And he's also able to use Asia's arm, Asia's cross. Oh, how was Phoenix defeated? With holy water. Yeah, threw it on him. And then, prior to this, they had, Ray's basically first kissed him on the cheek, and then she, of course, had him have his head in her lap, the lap pillow. Though she does it to unlock a portion of the seal, because she put so much power in his body, didn't want to kill him, so basically nearly trained him to death in order to get this. And then, after he defeats Phoenix, apparently, from the way it's described by Lucifer himself, both his parents and Phoenix's parents have no problem with the result at all. And they leave via a griffin. And what's Sumi's reward for freeing Rise from this engagement, gets a kiss on the lips, and it's his first kiss from Rise. And then pretty much he decides, oh yeah, I'm gonna start living with you now. And she just moves right into his house. And the manga has happened in an extra chapter. In the actual novel, this happened in the epilogue. And the show happens during the closing credits, the final episode. But it's so funny, the fact that she actually moved in. She just decided just on a whim, it's like, okay, I'm gonna live with you now. Though in the series it says, from what I remember from the manga and the light novel, it's so she can be closer to him. And comedy ensues like right after she moves in. I'll talk about that when I get a chance to talk about season 2. I like the story for this series. Do I have a problem with the fan service stuff? Not really, no. A lot of the reaction of it's quite nice. Though I do appreciate, though, they do cut down in the show. They had this a few times happen during the first 12 chapters, first 22 chapters, where the character frequently has nosebleeds because he sees breast. Yeah. They do trim that down, which... Now, here's kind of the thing. That was actually poked fun at very recently, like, as of, like, last year, when they had... Because whenever Roshi from Dragon Ball Z did it, he did a lot, almost any time he saw, like, a naked woman, or at least anytime he's around women. He has frequent nosebleeds, so he trained himself to get rid of that. Yeah, I've heard the reason why that happened was because there was a lot of complaints. I'm like, the nosebleed thing has been happening since the original Dragon Ball series, and yet they had to get rid of it, which is quite weird. Yeah. In the case of this series, I think it only happened... They didn't overdo it like they did in the manga. There's like a little bit here and there. It's like his nose does bleed a little bit because, well, fanboy reaction to seeing, well, a naked girl. In the show, it only happened a couple times. And I'm glad they really cut it down because it was not necessary to overdo it the way they did in the manga. They did it like, from what I remember from the first two light novels, they only did it once, a nosebleed thing. Yeah. As far as I can tell, that's really it. A pretty good season, from my opinion, anyways. And would I recommend it? Yes. But for people who are of high school age to adult. That is all I recommend. Basically from like ages, I'd say from 14 to older. 14 I'd say about 14 to older, that's basically recommended. That's basically a lot of high schools start at 14 and then they graduate either 17 or 18. That's basically the lowest I would bring it there, and forward. That's all I recommend too. Not for little kids, because I would not let them listen to all the sex jokes basically to do in this series, because there's a lot of them. And of course all the perviness, like I said, and the nudity, and there's swearing in this series. Oh yes, there's swearing. Yeah, they don't swear very much. I mean, a lot of the time they use the same word over and over again, like this is actually the second dub I've actually heard where they drop an F-bomb. Yes, seriously. Second one I've seen where they do that. Though in Hellsing Ultimate they did a lot. Though probably not the record for like one airing. Though I heard there's one film called The F Word, which actually dropped the F-bomb like... I heard the record was like 200 times over the course of the entire film. This one, over the course of these 12 episodes, the only time F-bomb is actually dropped in this whole show... Over the course of 12 episodes, only happens about 3 times. Yeah, 3 times. The B word is said, I'd say about 2 or 3 times. The S word is said several times. Yeah. Yeah, they do swear in the show, but it's not heavy excessive in this show. They don't do it like every other sentence. They do it at least several times during an actual episode. It doesn't bother me at all when you see a character in the dub do this. I know for a fact Dragon Ball Super, they have character swearing now. They did it in the original series, both in either DBZ or in Dragon Ball. The only reason why I think it's acceptable to do that in anime, because people's standards have laxed over the last 10 years. That's my personal guess. Though this is Funimation doing this dub, not Visme or any other dub company. One thing you gotta love about Funimation, they never edit anything out. They may add little segments here and there, like a little few seconds of footage. They do take time to do that. They add stuff, They don't take stuff out like other dub studios do, like 4Kids, where they edit out like blood and like a lot of their stuff, or they change stuff for like no reason at all. That's one thing I love about Funimation. They don't take anything out. They keep pretty much everything in. They do change some dialogue here and there, mostly, but they do keep it pretty much the same. They just translate, of course, all to English. The story stays pretty much the same, and the editing is not, well, pretty much all they do is simply just edit out, well, the Japanese words replaced with English. They do have words translate into English, which I do appreciate doing that. Yeah. And I should also point out, though, later on in the series, well, a little bit later anyways, I haven't read the light novels in the manga, Asune does meet Rize's parents, and of course Rize basically scolds him for having fantasies about her mother. Yes, of course her mother trains him to be a gentleman. And of course I should point out also that later on, like in volume 22, this is right on line that she and Asune get engaged. Yep. I haven't read it yet, but that's what I heard what happens. Yep, so that's really it for this particular review. Stay tuned for my review of the OVAs and shorts, if I can find them. Yeah, if I can find them. That'll be episode 2. Okay, but until we see you next review, bye.